Ed Augustus, the Massachusetts Secretary of Housing and Livable Communities, is our guest this morning. Let's go on the record. A housing landscape that has become daunting to navigate. Can the governor's plan to kickstart development change the dynamic? The secretary's in the chair. Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Sharman Cicchetti. It's great to have you with us this Sunday after Thanksgiving. With us at the table, as you can see, is Ed Augustus. He is the Massachusetts, it's a long title, the Massachusetts Secretary of Housing and Livable Communities.
Yep, that's it.
That's it. How does that all fit in the door?
Well, I have to go on the other side on my business card. So,
by the way, the first person to hold that office, Governor Healey, making it a cabinet position. Prior to that, as you know, he was the city manager of Worcester from 2014 to 2022. And I'll remind everyone right here, Worcester is the second largest city in New England, not just in Massachusetts. He was also a state senator from 05 to 09, native of Worcester. He holds degrees from Suffolk University and Johns Hopkins. Great to have you with us, Ed. Great to see you.
Good to be with you.
Thanks for being here. We want to start out with a story that's really dominated headlines for weeks, the shelter crisis, driven by an influx of migrants. Now, conference rooms inside the State Transportation Building have been turned into temporary emergency shelters. Families are on the waiting list, and they continue to come. Do you think that overflow sites are the way forward here?
Well, we know we need some overflow sites. The use of the state office buildings really just a short-term bridge until we can get some of these overflow sites online. We've partnered with the United Way to provide grant opportunities to community-based organizations to provide these overflow options for families. We don't want families out in the cold, but as they're waiting on the wait list. So we'll have some of those overflow sites online very shortly. And then
within
we'll be
days, you think?
Within a few days, yes. And, you know, we're relying on our community partners to provide that kind of overflow capacity for these families.
When you say community partners, you're talking about nonprofits in the area?
That's right. Faith-based communities, not-for-profits. We've had a number of them apply to the United Way Fund that we helped to set up that has about $5 million available to community-based organizations to offset some of the costs to provide this overflow shelter.
Well, lawmakers couldn't find a compromise on this but before the holiday, and then they broke for the holiday. Advocates say that lawmakers should go back to work and fund this crisis. They say there's no time to wait. What do you say?
Well, I know that we desperately need the supplemental budget appropriation that the governor proposed back in September. It's critical to provide the level of service that we're providing to the 7,500 families that are in the shelter system right now.
Which is growing exponentially, by the way.
Significant. We have 40 to 50 families arriving every day, and we're doing the best we can to triage those that arrive, those that are particularly vulnerable. We have kind of capacity for them. Others are placed on the wait list, and as soon as we can exit families from the system, we can bring them in off the wait list into the shelter system.
Are you looking 3 to 6 months down? You know, you're estimating 40 to 50 families a day. You've got 7,500 families, dozens on the waiting list. Do you have a number in mind for in 3 months what you expect, or 6 months what you're anticipating?
Well, one of the logics of putting the cap in place was to allow us to take some of the energy that we had been focusing on growing a system by about 1,000 units per month and putting that energy into exiting folks. So we've been able to successfully exit about 450 families since September 1st. We think we can substantially increase that number, which is ultimately the goal.
But how many more do you anticipate? The state surely has some numbers they expect.
It's hard to really, predict the numbers. The Massachusetts families that we see coming to the system, we use our home-based program, which is a cash assistance program. And often families are doubled up. They're staying with a loved one. And we can give cash assistance to those families, maybe to help pay grocery bills or utility bills with whoever they're staying with. It's more challenging for the new arrivals because they don't have a safety net system. They don't often have family and friends in the community they can do that with. So.
Sharman did a story just within the last week showing a family. Now, this time of year, it got cold just before Thanksgiving, and they had like tropical shirts, they had shorts, and they had flip-flops.
Yep.
So these are the other expenses that go with just a place to stay.
And that's because they rush to get on the
And
plane.
that's because they rush to get on the plane.
Yeah, families are leaving some horrific circumstances, mostly from Haiti, which is really a failed state, with gangs and violence prevalent. And so people pick up their children, they run for safety.
This is a federal issue.
It really is a federal issue, and I think the governor's been very clear about the importance of having the federal government work with us to expedite work authorization. All of these families that we've talked to desperately want to work. They're here, they have skills in many cases, they can contribute to the much needed kind of workforce here in Massachusetts. We've got a lot of employers that are desperate for employees. They want to work. We just need that work authorization to make that connection.
Which brings us to item 2. Is that Governor Healy has put forward a plan to bring more affordable housing here to Massachusetts. You're the point person on that. So in 2023, with the median price of a home around $600,000, that doesn't seem to balance with affordable housing. So what exactly is affordable housing?
Well, affordable is different things. I mean, there's one definition of affordable that is income restricted, that would make sure that certain number of housing units are set aside for folks of particular income levels. But what we really need is housing that's affordable to everyone across the income spectrum. Folks who may be, frontline retail workers or work in kind of service level positions who, need a much more affordable housing option. And then our kind of workforce housing, folks who may be employees of cities or towns, DPW or firefighters.
Are developers willing to build that kind of housing? Because it seems like what we see out there are luxury condos being built, or something for someone on the lower end of the spectrum, but nobody in the middle. And that seems to be where the problem is.
And that's why the Affordable Homes Act that the governor introduced a month ago really has a set of recommendations in there that we think are going to expedite the production of housing of all income levels. It's a $4 billion plan that helps provide subsidies to developers to create affordable options. And that combined with the MBTA Communities Act, which is being kind of debated and implemented across the state.
Some communities don't fully embrace that. So what about communities that don't want more housing? What rights and privileges do they have?
Well, they have a responsibility to comply with the MBTA Communities Act law, which was passed by the previous administration, and the implementation is falling on this administration. And we've invested about $6 million in technical assistance to help cities and towns comply with the law. But they need to remove some of the barriers that have historically been in place to production of dense multifamily housing near transit.
Like, for example, what are the barriers that are in place?
So often they'll have requirements that you need special permits to allow housing for multifamily, which can add months and sometimes years to the process of building housing. And developers, time is money, and they'll go to a community that's more welcoming, more willing to build it.
All right, I want to talk about the governor's $4 billion plan that also allows cities and towns to enact a local tax on high-dollar real estate sales. Now, that's also known as a transfer fee. That's getting pushback. Why do you think this is necessary?
Well, we estimate that the transfer fee can generate hundreds of millions of dollars depending on how many communities opt in. So it's an opt-in provision for cities and towns if they choose to take advantage of this. And they have some flexibility on where to set the rate. It could be from 0.5% up to 2%.
So hundreds of millions of dollars, where would that go?
It would go into affordable housing production or preservation, or it could be used for their local housing authorities. It would be controlled at the local level. Cities and towns would make the decisions for themselves based on what their unique needs are. So in many ways, it's giving control back to cities and towns and some resources to support that housing production.
I want to use 2 words now, and I wonder what your reaction is. Rent control.
Rent control, I think, is something that people talk about as a symptom of the overall problem. The problem is there's not enough supply. The Affordable Homes Act is specifically designed to increase supply. We think 40,000 new units will be created over the first 5 years if this bill is enacted. And it's a basic law of economics. If there's more supply, then buyers and renters are going to have more power, more say in the marketplace than they currently have now. It
couldn't reach the ballot question. It didn't reach the threshold to be put on the ballot.
Yeah, again, I think that's a dealing with kind of the symptom of the problem. We're trying to deal with the root cause of the problem, which is lack of supply.